What I think we learned really early on in the development process was the truth was going to be scary.
It's overwhelming now how easily germs are spread and how easily one can contract these viruses.
Once the severity of the outbreak becomes clear, social structures start to deteriorate, and we kind of turn into barbarians. The way we live our lives is so fragile, and so the movie explores, that fragility.
It made me start thinking about, are we prepared?
Where's the fire department?
In a society where we rely so heavily on the infrastructure of the society, the answer is no. We would all probably be in quite a bit of trouble.
The overriding impression I got from all of the experts on this was that it was a matter of when, not if.
You're imagining when I get sick, there's pills or there's a vaccine or something, or even if there's not, my president can protect me. What I think everybody has to understand is that that comfort zone is false.
I think all of us, when we get sick and we get the flu, wonder what's going on in our bodies. And viruses are amazing because they don't behave the way other living things do. They sort of inhabit a cell and then reprogram the cell and use it as a Xerox machine and make copies of themselves and then proliferate throughout your body. And if your body has seen this virus before, it can deal with it. If your body hasn't, it's got to figure out with its antibodies how to combat this thing.
We think of evolution for ourselves as occurring over millions of years. For these guys, evolution's occurring on minutes and hours, and these things are constantly changing, and so they pick up a nasty gene. If they have that capacity to spread, now you're talking about something that's really dangerous.
With the new mutation, we are predicting an R0 of 4. Approximately 1 in 12 people on the planet will contract the disease.
Could something emerge that had this extraordinary capacity to both spread and kill people? And could it paralyze economic systems and the capacities of government? Yes, all of this could happen.
So we have a novel virus with a mortality rate in the low 20s, no treatment protocol, and no vaccine at this time.
That is correct. We live in a scary world where environmentally we're encroaching on animals' habitats, they're encroaching on ours, we're cutting things down that we shouldn't be cutting down. Things are changing, and viruses are coming out of those zoonotic events where man interacts with animals.
60% of the illnesses, the infectious diseases that a human being could encounter in their life come from sort of the animal kingdom that jump into the human species.
Maybe an isolated Homo sapien here and there was exposed to these viruses in the past, but it never had the opportunity to take off the way it does now in our globalized and urbanized world.
Trains, planes, everything goes faster. So a virus will go faster as well. When a virus spreads, the world becomes very small.
There will be more and more of these viruses that are entering, and there will be devastating viruses that occur in all of our lifetimes. And the real question, and how sort of future generations will judge us, is to what extent we were prepared for it. We need to get ahead of the curve. We need to be approaching these things, and we need to be thinking about how are we going to go out there and predict the occurrence of these pandemics, and how are we going to prevent them. Each day in the world, animal populations die from infectious diseases. Sometimes the deaths of animals can precede humans. Part of the objective is to actually find these events and catch them.
Somewhere in the world, the wrong pig met up with the wrong bat.
If a vaccine or effective drug was discovered, the demand would be there, but have we really thought through what it would take to immunize an entire population of a city in a short period of time? That's the kind of things we really can't start thinking about.
I'm hoping that this movie will stimulate a conversation about what does preparedness mean, what are the investments that it takes, what are we willing to do to make the world safe for our children from the increasing risks of pandemics.
We have a responsibility to take care of this earth that we share because ultimately, it is the only home that we're gonna have. And I think we don't wanna wait till it bites back.
As of last night, there were 5 deaths and 32 cases.
If there's an outbreak somewhere, and this is what both the World Health Organization and the CDC do, samples come in to select labs.
We send samples to the CDC.
In 72 hours, we'll know what it is.
Their job is to look at these samples and try and figure out what the hell happened.
We tested all of our antibodies. I didn't see much cross-reactivity.
We went to the CDC and we saw the samples that are locked away in the BSL-4 labs where you need to have a retinal scan to get in there because this stuff is so lethal.
When you have no idea how a virus is transferred from one person to another, you have no idea how it travels, you don't know how it grows, you don't know what it attaches onto, you don't know any of that, and you're really in the dark, you go to a BSL-4.
It's the highest level biosafety lab there is, and this is where they really study the dangerous stuff.
From here on out, I want no one working on this except the BSL-4.
So the actors had to learn how to wear the suits, what the safety procedures were. We had somebody from UCLA, Natasha Griffith. She was instrumental in helping getting those procedures correct.
Just pull the cassette out very gently, because otherwise everything is going to start falling out, because adhesive doesn't hold inside.
Okay. That's good to know.
Jennifer Ely spent a lot of time in the labs to understand what it's like to be a scientist.
I spent an afternoon with Natasha and Dimitri, actually in the suits, in the mock-up lab, getting used to them, and even attaching and detaching the air hoses is quite tricky, and we wanted it to look like we were as au fait with it as possible. Well, the suit is filled with air that is constantly being pushed out so that nothing can travel in to the environment inside the suit to create a barrier, and that is also the air that you breathe.
We had the real suits that had to be custom made because you can't just throw on any size. They're specifically, for your sizes. They make them brightly colored because you want to know where your suit is, because if you tear it for some reason, you're toast. So we had to make all that function and work with a lot of technical adventures.
We tried using dead virus combined with several adjuvants to boost immune response.
And?
No protective antibodies, a lot of dead monkeys.
Many of the figures that we use in the film are based on scientific data, the growth of the virus in tissue culture, the ways in which people would make vaccines. All of these things are really based in current status of knowledge.
Are we even close?
If we even had a viable vaccine right now, we would still have to do human trials, and that would take weeks.
I asked both Natasha and Ian if they would inject themselves to test a vaccine in this situation, and they both answered without hesitation that they would do so. It's their purpose is to deal with these emergency situations, and if that's what they need to do in order to do that, then they will do it.
I hope that people come away realizing what these scientists do, and how hard they work and how kind of amazing their jobs are.
I'd rather the news story be that we overreacted and that many people lost their lives because we didn't do enough. That's why we're here today.
There are some people whose job it is to protect and look forward about where this thing is going to go and how big it's going to be, and should we be closing schools and shutting down airports, which of course have huge economic implications. That's sort of the world that Lawrence Fishburne's character has to preside over, is how do you build policy in the face of that kind of panic.
And the affected cities are Minneapolis, Chicago, Los Angeles, Boston, and Salt Lake. He's the guy that you look to who's going to tell you that everything is going to be fine. We are going to figure out what it is. We are going to contain it.
We've reached out to the WHO, see what they know.
The WHO has a community of people called GORN, the Global Outbreak Response Network. CDC has the GDD, Global Disease Division. The way in which we communicate the threat, respond to the threat, keep track of how we're doing, those are the tools of trade that epidemiologists have used in combating every disease.
How much information do you release to the public? How much are they entitled to know? How much should you tell them? What should you hold back? The pressure and responsibility is intense.
People will panic. The virus will be the least of our worries. It will tip over now.
The idea of letting people know about potential problems, I think, is one of the most difficult issues that medical reporters deal with. A person wants to know when they hear something bad or something scary, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my family? And I think you have to be ready with those answers as soon as you are starting to deliver this news.
Tell them what an Arnold of 2 really means, Dr. Cheever. Teach them some math, No?
What we're not so good at is coping with the fear and how we communicate about the virus and how the internet and other kinds of media can be used to create a different kind of pandemic.
They say the French and Americans have a cure.
Who says?
The internet.
And you believe it?
In a sense, those misconceptions and the fear that they breed are also a kind of virus that I wanted to write about.
In order to get scared, all you have to do is come in contact with a rumor. I think what Mr. Crumwoody is spreading is far more dangerous than the disease.
There's disinformation about everything because we live in an era where the internet can be updated, so you can write anything about anybody. The damage is irreparable because it creates panic.
This is for Scythia. If I'm here tomorrow, you'll know it works.
It's interesting to think about the information almost as a transmissible disease. I mean, it can cause a lot of damage, and it spreads very, very quickly, and in some cases, people can actually suffer or die from it.
I think his demand for all the truth is really interesting, and perhaps something that governments in this situation should think about.
How do you feel about surrendering your rights today by getting this vaccine? What if there's a side effect to this vaccine?
I think his demands for alternatives is interesting and something that we should demand and expect in scenarios like this. You know, give us alternatives.
There is no proof that Forsythia works.
What defines works? Against what strain of the virus?
I don't think anyone will say that we're going to live in a world that's free of infectious diseases. So instead of focusing on that, let's focus on ways to make sure that if one happens, if there's an outbreak, that we can mitigate the damage as quickly as possible.